Hello everyone, back tuning into today's third video. We're going to have a look at the CFS V2 and Beijing Climate Centre long-range models. For today's first video, we're doing the CFS versus Beijing Climate Centre 6-month look ahead. So we're going to go 6 months ahead with both of these long-range models. Going to be a mashup. We're going to put them together and we're going to see what they're both showing for the next 6 months. It takes us through the spring and through the summer as well. So we're going to go from March through to August 2020. Now, of course, with this, what we have to say is that further out we go, the more unreliable we get. So it is just for fun. The first month or two with both models hopefully has a little bit of scientific merit, but as we go sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months away, that is in the realm of just for fun. But we're going to see what both of these models are showing for the spring and also for the summer of 2020, and I'll get on that for you very shortly. Just say that the first video released today was a weekend forecast, so as well as on a Saturday, your detailed weekend look ahead was the first video up, and also a week to 10-day video update that is here on the homepage at Gaz. So just scroll down the page a little bit and you'll find it above the snow desk. Tomorrow, lots of updates coming up as well. I'll talk you through those at the end of this video. So we're going to start off with the CFS V2. So I'm going to begin with 700 millibar height anomalies for the next 6 months. Then we'll have a look at corresponding temperature and corresponding precipitation anomalies. When we're done with the CFS, we'll then shift over to the Beijing Climate Centre and we'll do it all over again. So, this is the 700 millibar height anomaly for March 2020. If everything's working correctly with the models, this should be the most reliable month of the whole thing because, of course, this is only a few days away now. So, we've got above average heights, high pressure sitting across many central western parts of Europe, and below average heights out to the northwest up here. Jet stream is doing something a little bit like that, and so you expect a relatively anticyclonic month there, especially so for southern and eastern parts of the country. Always a little bit more unsettled for the northwest, always a little bit more influence from a jet stream there, but overall high pressure is in control for March, and that would bring us a rather drier and perhaps even slightly warmer type spring month than we've been used to. So that's how March is looking. Let's have a look at April, and by April the high pressure really starts to take over. The low pressure is out to the northwest, again pushed further northwards up towards Greenland, and it's weakening. High pressure is sitting over and just to the east of the country. If we come over here, we can see the high pressure is centred through sort of northern parts of Europe. It's almost a Scandinavian high, but just a little bit southwards, the classic Scandi high. And so this would, instead of bringing in like an easterly wind, this would bring in more of an east to southeasterly. A little bit like that. It's still a very sort of anticyclonic signal, though, very anticyclonic high pressure dominated signal. Don't expect a lot of dry weather, and I would have thought quite warm temperatures too. Then we're into May, so we're 3 months out now, going much further out, obviously getting much more unreliable. For May, we have above average height still extending through the UK and into northern parts of Europe as well. There's probably some sort of trough of low pressure through here. Looks as though gradually through May, the ridge is being put under pressure, is possibly starting to get broken down a little bit. But still an anticyclonic signal overall, but it is a weaker high pressure signal, I think, for May. Possibly the atmosphere beginning to wobble a little bit. Now that's June, so we're 4 months out now, room around with just for fun. June has quite a lot of blocking sitting to our north, so above average heights are sitting generally to the north, to the northwest, and also to the northeast as well. I think there would be some sort of trough of low pressure through here, and a dip in the jet stream. So June could be rather unsettled actually based on that. It doesn't look too bad, but sometimes you have to read between the lines with these long range models, and I think there's a trough through here. Maybe a bit thundery as well, probably quite a wet and maybe thundery type pattern as we go through into June. Could be a very warm month though. July looks like bad. This is more of a classic Scandinavian high. Again, come over to this side of the chart. And looks like it's more of a classic Scandinavian high. Possibly quite a lot of easterlies going on during the course of July. Again, we've got all of this white, where I think we probably fill that in with a trough of low pressure. We've got a ridge just here, and there's the Azores high. The Azores high looks a little bit weakened, actually, for this summer. So, again, you would look at that and think it's not too bad an anomaly, but it could be rather more unsettled than you might envisage. We're at month 5 now, so it's not worth worrying about. And then finally, month 6, August, is the worst of the lot, really. Then we have an actual trough of low pressure centred over and just to our west. We bring in westerlies, and that looks like it will be a very unsettled August. But of course, as it's 6 months away, then there's no reason to be overly concerned about that at all. Let's have a temperature anomalies looking with CFS V2 for the next 6 months. So starting again with March, going back to month number 1, a significantly milder than average month again. So we've had January, February, both very mild across most parts of Europe. March continues it, bringing in those southwesterlies still for March, so above average temperatures through all parts of Europe during the course of March. Go through to April, and we're still above average. The anomaly is lessening. It's a weaker anomaly, but still above average for western parts of Europe. We're up to around 1 degree above average. Many of these northern and central and eastern parts of Europe, even some western parts of Europe, really. We're talking about Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Germany. So that's into Western Europe. And even those areas, we're talking about up to a couple of degrees above average. Mildest anomalies to average, warmest to average, is like northern Scandinavia and over to western parts of Russia through the Baltic Sea. Go through to May, and the temperature anomaly drops a little bit further, so it's still above average, generally, even in May. But you notice that month by month, this anomaly is coming down. So now we're not too far from average, really, across these western parts of Europe. And the warmest anomalies to average in the far northeast and east of Europe, where we're still up to a couple of degrees above average. But month by month, the temperature anomaly is reducing. That's June, so June looks like quite a warm month really for most parts of Europe. Those red colours come back, so again, many western, central, northern, eastern parts of Europe, most parts of Europe really up to a couple of degrees above average. Out in the west, again, Ireland, UK, the far west of France, down to Spain and Portugal, we are nearer normal there into June. So not much sign of anything colder than average though. That's July, again, looking like pretty warm conditions dominating across most parts of Europe in July, month number 5. And then month number 6, which is August. That one, again, most parts of Europe are above average, but out in the west, obviously, things are getting cooler now. We have either average or no signal forecast for the UK, for Ireland, for much of France. So temperatures are lowering as we get through to August. The reason for that, of course, is that there's low pressure in the Atlantic, and we bring westerlies back in. Westerlies in winter are going to be very mild, but westerlies in middle of summer, they're going to be a lot cooler. Precipitation anomalies, back to March. This is how things look in terms of rainfall with CFS V2 for March. So a rather dry month really coming up through most parts of Europe, and of course that is good news after all of the torrential rain that we've had recently. The far north of Europe, so that's Scotland up to Norway and northern parts of Sweden, those areas are wetter than average, as is Iceland. So still influenced from the jet stream through there. We've still got the jet stream sort of ploughing through here, but it is further north as compared to it being through most of the winter. Drier than average conditions taking over across many parts of Europe, including England and Wales, as high pressure builds up from the Azores. Then we go through to April, and again we're seeing signs of another drier than average month, so quite a nice spring coming up here, or early spring anyway. March, April, both signalled to be milder than average, warmer than average, and relatively dry too. Finally, we get a chance to dry out if the CFS is right. Bit of a change again for May. We lose those significantly drier than average conditions. Still hints at being a little bit drier than average across western parts of Europe, but certainly the anomaly is reduced a lot, and overall it looks as though things are probably going a bit more unsettled as we get through to May. I don't think we're talking about a washout of a month, but the spring ends after a nice, dry and relatively warm March and April. The spring ends in May on a relatively cooler and more unsettled note. That's June. Again, not looking too bad. It is wetter than average through France, wetter than average through Spain and Portugal. That could be indicative of thunderstorms pushing up from the south. For us in the UK, again, we're talking about dry and average conditions through eastern areas and over Scandinavia and eastern parts of Europe as well. But to be honest, it doesn't look too bad into June. July turning more unsettled, so yes, it looks like things are beginning to get more unsettled as the summer goes on. And then August, excuse me, August looks like that. It is 6 months away, so again, it's not worth worrying about. But gradually through the summer, it looks like things are getting more unsettled as the westerlies come back. So it's not a particularly inspiring picture for the summer, but the spring, certainly the early part of the spring, looks quite nice during the course of March and also April as well. I'll pause the video there, and we'll be back very shortly with Beijing Climate Centre section in the second half of the video. Let's pause there, and I'll get rid of CFS charts and we'll get ready for Beijing Climate Centre. So I'll see you in around 2 seconds' time. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume our CFS versus Beijing Climate Centre matchup. We're going 6 months ahead with the CFS B2. In fact, we have been 6 months ahead with the CFS B2. Now we're going to go 6 months ahead with the Beijing Climate Centre and compare the two. So we're going to see, first of all, 500 millibar height anomalies with the Beijing Climate Centre model, and then we'll have a look at the corresponding temperature and precipitation anomalies. If you're enjoying the video, please let us know that you're enjoying it in the comments at Gaz. Give us a like on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Right, so we're going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly for March 2020. And we can see the UK highlighted much more clearly now, of course, on the new view Beijing Climate Centre model. Red is high pressure, blue to low pressure, and look at that for March. We've got an area of high pressure being forecast to be centred over the top of the UK. So this is going for a dry anticyclonic signal for March. Low pressure is out here. The jet stream is pushing northwards. Both the CFS and the Beijing Climate Centre are seeing much stronger anticyclonic influences for March. So that breaks us out of this very unsettled pattern that we've had throughout the winter. This is April's 500 millibar height anomaly from the Beijing Climate Centre. This one has above average heights just out to our west, bringing in perhaps just a little bit more influence from the Atlantic and the jet stream. But it's not an unsettled month. There will be a lot of dry weather on offer, maybe a little bit cooler and slightly more unsettled compared to what the CFS was showing in April. May brings back the high pressure big time. So yes, we have this big ridge sitting over the UK and Ireland during May. Deep low pressure across eastern, northeastern parts of Europe and in the Atlantic. So the jet stream does something a little bit like that. Looks pretty cool, unsettled for Eastern Europe and Western Russia. But for us, we're in about nice region of high pressure. Very, very pleasant spring actually being forecast here with a lot of dry weather on offer, allowing us to dry out from this horrendously wet winter. This is what June has to offer. Now, we're at month 4, and as with CFS, we're getting into the realm of being just for fun, just for a laugh. Don't take anything now too seriously. For June, we have above average heights sort of centred to the west in the Atlantic. Low pressure is up here. Probably still a reasonable amount of dry weather even into June, but the difference, I suppose, is that wind is coming off the Atlantic, so it wouldn't be particularly warm, it wouldn't be a particularly hot pattern, but very pleasant, a lot of dry weather and a pleasant start to the summer. That's how July looks. Now, July has a ridge centred over towards Newfoundland. It has low pressure up here. That ridge is extending into the UK. It's also building up some high pressure up towards Scandinavia. So it's trying to get us into a very anticyclonic signal for July, which, if it was to come up, could turn us pretty hot. But I think we're just still bringing in enough influence from the jet stream to be keeping winds from the west. With that, it's certainly having a good go at getting us into a hot and dry month, but I think we're just bringing in enough influence from the Atlantic and from the jet stream to keep temperatures just that little bit lower and maybe a little bit on the showery side as well. So where are we? We're just there. Then we go through to month number 6, which is August. Probably, again, similar to what the CFS showed, probably the worst month of the summer. Does it in a slightly different way. It takes a high pressure towards Greenland. And it looks like it's setting up some sort of trough there over the UK and the west of Europe. It doesn't look overly dramatic, but I think that is a much cooler, much more unsettled signal as we're going into August. So again, don't want to go too over the top. It's 6 months away, so it's hardly worth worrying about at all. But it's interesting that both of these models are forecasting something a little bit cooler and a little bit more unsettled later in the summer. Temperature anomalies with the Beijing Climate Centre seasonal model for the next 6 months, starting with March. Slightly above average during March, slightly above average temperatures there. Most parts of Northern Europe also above average. Probably not quite as mild a month as the CFS is going for. April also comes out slightly above average in those yellow shady colours. On the scale, yellow is like up to ½ degree above average. So we're not going too over the top with the temperature here. It's just a little bit above average. It's not as warm as the CFS is showing, but nevertheless it would still be reasonably pleasant. May looks a little bit warmer, actually, which I suppose you'd expect with high pressure centred over the country during May. It's a month that's getting ever hotter, of course. So then we're sort of lifting those shadings up to quite deep orange colours. So quite a warm end to the spring after just being a little bit above average. And then we go through to June, and that one also slightly above average temperatures during June. Not a big deviation, just a little bit above. Remember, we're bringing in winds off the Atlantic, so it's not going to be overly hot if we have westerlies in June. July looks warmer though. So in July we're back into those deeper orange shadings. Most parts of Northern Europe also looking really very warm indeed. And then we get through to August, and August starts to lower the temperature. Then we revert to average, or maybe even a hint of being ever so slightly below average. So that's how the temperatures look with Beijing Climate Centre. Finally, precipitation. So as you'd expect, for March, we have a drier than average month being seen there. So both models, CFS and the Beijing Climate Centre, are both in agreement about March being anticyclonic, drier than average, much drier compared to what we've had through this winter, definitely. And you know, either a little bit above average or quite substantially above average. They differ a bit about that, but they're both in the same sort of ballpark for March, which is a drier, a much more high-pressure dominated month. For April, looks a little bit more unsettled during April, perhaps a bit surprisingly, given the 500 millibar height anomaly. So for April, actually, northern parts of the British Isles go a bit wetter than average, still hanging on just about to drier than average conditions down in the south. The dry weather then comes back as we go through to May. Most places going significantly drier than average again. So it's quite an interesting spring. The Beijing Climate Centre starts off dry and mild with high pressure dominating, goes cooler and more unsettled during April, and then we go back to much drier and also hotter conditions during May. So quite an interesting spring with a lot of variation going on. June is also coming out drier than average, so plenty of opportunities to dry out from this really horribly wet winter. Just hints at maybe starting to go a bit more unsettled into July, although most places still just about drier than average. Much of Europe still drier than average, but it just looks like it's beginning to go a little bit more unsettled in July. And then August, yes, that's a confirmation of the trough setting up over the UK in August, because we go wetter than average for the end of the summer. So a front-loaded summer being suggested here, I think, with the Beijing Climate Centre, and to some degree the CFS as well. Front-loaded with the drier, warmer conditions early in the summer, and then we revert to something a lot cooler and more unsettled later in the summer. But that's months 4, 5 and 6, so it's hardly worth getting worked up about that. And I think overall the spring, so we leave that aside, we'll know more about the summer in the next couple of months. Coming back to the spring though, quite an interesting spring being forecast. The main takeout from both of these models, the CFS and also Beijing Climate Centre, the main takeaway from this update is that they are both forecasting a much drier season for the spring. They are seeing significantly drier conditions compared to what we've had previous winter. That doesn't mean it's going to be completely dry from beginning to end. There will still be low pressure at times, there will still be rain, but overall a much more anticyclonic signal with both of these long range models for the spring compared to winter, giving us the opportunity to recover from this awful, horrible wet winter. So that's the first and most important takeaway from this update. Also being over a relatively mild spring, with generally above average temperatures, although probably not as big a deviation as we've had through the winter, so closer to average, but still overall on the average side. April looks like it could be the one that might be a bit more unsettled if we take the Beijing Climate Centre solution, but with the CFS it's actually March, April for the 2 dry months, and then it's May, but possibly hints of being a bit more unsettled. So there's a disagreement about that. CFS wants to have generally dry conditions in March and April, and then a bit more unsettled in May, whereas the Beijing Climate Centre suggests March and May are the 2 dry months, bookending a little bit more of an unsettled August. So a bit of disagreement about that, which you would expect, of course, variation because they're different models. But overall, the broad signal is definitely something significantly drier for this spring, and reasonable temperatures, setting up quite a nice season. It's all just for fun, it's just for a laugh, so let me know what you think in the comments to Gazweather's. Give us a like on video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to Gazweather's YouTube channel. We are trying to boost the sub count as much as we can. One day we're going to get to 10,000 subs, but I think we've got a year or 2 to go before we get there. But if we can keep boosting the subs day by day, then eventually we will get to that 10k margin. So that's it for this month's Beijing Climate Centre CFS 6 month look. We'll do it all over again next month. Now tomorrow, very busy day coming up. Talking of spring, we've got our 7th and final analogues update for the spring of 2020. So that's going to be pretty interesting. A week tomorrow, we've got the spring forecast being released, of course. Also tomorrow, we are going to have Gazweather's Study Roundup. We'll have the ECMWF, Metro France and DWD long range model update as well. So we're really throwing the long range stuff at you this weekend. And then tomorrow night, I think we're going to do Ensembles Watch. Right, though, but at nearly 23 minutes. That's all for now. And thanks for watching.